Hello everyone, it's Becky here from Ivy's Corner. Today I'm going to be drawing a tangle called Molygon, which is a lovely one and can be used very much as kind of a sort of well, it will fill any space, but it's also kind of its own focus tangle. It uses some curvy lines. It's also kind of an alternative to a grid, so we can use a Molygon tangle to fill all sorts of interesting fragments and create interesting kind of meta patterns. Now I'm not going to use a pencil for this one to start with. I'm going to go dive straight in with my lovely Micron pen here. And to start with, all we do to start Molygon is to, wherever we fancy, choose a space and start kind of creating almost like a wedge shape, so a little bit like the sort of a segment of an orange, I like to think of it. So I'm going to start here, come around in a C shape, create quite a nice large one to start with, and that's our first Molygon section. And I'm going to aura this line. Now, depending on kind of what space you're filling with your Molygon, you can kind of move your line to start any point here. I'm going to kind of mostly aura that space and come around here, but I'm going to stop about here and come back again, like so. And now I'm going to start here and aura. I'm going to just repeat these sort of wedge shapes and come round. Now obviously I'm going to run out of space if I carry on doing that, so I'm going to start auraing here instead and bring my wedge shape round here. Bijous are tricky with this because it's not the biggest of spaces to fill. And then come around here. You can kind of use it to turn corners and come around itself. And you can go from large to small and then start to get bigger again. You can also come off in different directions, so I might actually just, why not? We'll see what happens when we add one over here. It's a funny shaped one. There we go. So when I started with the outside of the Molygon and filled it in. But because I'm auraing the line that I've created, I'm sort of starting on the inside of the wedge shape as I've been going on. I'm going to do a much bigger one here, I think. Well, not much bigger, but we'll see. I'm going to aura this line and I'm going to fill this remaining space with my wedge shape. Okay, see, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent here. I might actually just do another one in here to fill this space. They don't have to be all the same, they can be a little bit different. So I've gone right up to the edges here, really making use of this lovely bijou tile. So now we've done our kind of our grid. It's not a grid, it's obviously a bit of a crazy grid, but we're going to fill these spaces and you can basically fill these spaces with anything you like. Now, because some of mine are quite small, I don't really want to go too detailed because I'm not going to be able to fit an awful lot in and it might look a bit too small and hard to see. I think what I'm going to do to start with is aura inside my Molygon shapes and then I'll fill that. So that will kind of create a little separation between the edges of the Molygon and the pattern that I'm going to put inside. I'm going to keep it quite simple with the pattern inside, I think. I'm going to create my little aura inside. So just following those lines, nice and slow. I'll do all of them first and then we'll come back and put some interesting patterns inside. Nice and slow and joining your lines up. Coming down to a thin space there, so I'm going to try and keep my aura lines nice and regular, but we'll see how we go. Turning the tile so that your hand is nice and relaxed. I actually can feel my hand, because I'm sort of drawing in quite small spaces, I can feel my hand sort of being fairly tense. So I'm going to just give it a little stretch and relax it out. Auraing these spaces. Auraing is obviously one of the key kind of things we do in Zentangle to enhance our tangles, or just even create the tangles actually. It's a really key kind of tool or aspect of drawing when you're drawing Zentangle. Just takes your mind off of having to plan too much, because all you're doing is just following a line you've already drawn. So we can see that the spaces are getting fairly small here, but that's okay. I'm not going to do too detailed a filler. There's all sorts that you can do with Molygon. But I think today I'm going to just keep it fairly simple and fill these little spaces that I've created with some nice orbs. So another kind of very common thing that you'll see in a lot of Zentangle. I'm going to start off by drawing a nice big one in the middle, or as big as will fit. And then I'm going to, rather than doing lots, I'm going to just tuck the other ones in underneath, like little peas in a pod. Filling in those little spaces there with some ink, just for a bit of drama. Nice and slow, making sure that I'm hitting my lines and not drawing over them. And using these little black spaces just to tidy up things that maybe I'm not so happy with. Obviously there are no mistakes in Zentangle, but that doesn't mean that you can't fix things that you perceive to be not quite as you'd like them. So starting on this one here, can you see I made this little error here when I was, not an error, but you know, I just didn't join my lines up quite as well. I wasn't paying attention enough. I'm going to just draw my orb around there so that it kind of disguises that little line error, and then fill in with the ink just to see how we go. Right, I'm going to keep going. This is going to take a little while, might be a longer video. Should have drawn my Molygons a little bit smaller, done a fewer of them. There we go, little on the end there. I'm going to start maybe drawing my orbs a little bit bigger, so tucking them in a little bit more. You say orbs rather than circles, just because a circle implies that it's perfect and perfectly round, which these are not. And I wouldn't really want them to be, because they would look almost too perfect. I think sometimes a little bit of character is always good in your drawing, because at the end of the day we have spent time hand drawing it ourselves, and it's nice to kind of acknowledge that, and see that in the finished result, because if it was drawn on a computer or digitally, it's much easier to get those kind of perfect shapes. But part of its charm, I think, is that there's perfection in the imperfections. Filling in the little spaces. Still got a few to go, so bear with me. I'm not the fastest drawer in the world. We all go at whichever speed is right for us. And actually, in some ways, it's not, you might not want to be watching a video for hours and hours. But part of the kind of the reason I like Zentangle is that it does give you that kind of relaxed focus, and it's not about completing it as quickly as you can. It's about focusing, relaxing, and enjoying the process. And so rushing through would kind of defeat the object. I just do a bigger one there. And I think there's going to be some interesting opportunities for shade and highlights with this tangle. Again, the advantage of drawing on a tan tile is that you do, fix that on there, is that you do have a colour other than white to not only use your shade on and your graphite to create shades and shadows, but you have the opportunity to, because your tile is not white, to add white, and that makes those highlights really jump it out at you. So there you go, that's my Molygon filled with some little orbs. And I'm going to come in to grab my pencil to add some graphite now. So I think what I'm going to do, I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do with this. I think what I'm going to do is just shade in here underneath each of my little Molygon shapes. So I'm holding my pencil in towards the palm of my hand, the base of the pencil's touching underneath my fingers there. And I'm pointing my pencil in towards the line to create a nice defined line of graphite. Adding that in here. Now, because my spaces are quite small inside my Molygon shapes, I was thinking I wouldn't add any graphite inside, because adding the chalk would kind of, it might be a bit, too much going on. But I think, I think I'm going to see how we go. So we're going to add a little bit of graphite under here. Now you could then just sort of sit and shade that. Because I'm holding my pencil, I think I'm also just going to add a little bit of graphite in to the corners of my filler of my Molygon. Just into those little corner pieces there. And that kind of just makes those little orbs tuck inside. Just adding them in the corners. Just a touch. And then I'm going to put my pencil down, pick up my tortillon, and I'll start where I started with the graphite. So I'm just going to add a little bit of graphite underneath. So blending that graphite just to soften the edges of where I've drawn it and make it look nice and even. I really think of the tortillon as a bit like a magic wand, because sometimes you sort of, I think when you're drawing, you can think, oh, I'm not sure how this is going to look. I don't know, adding the graphite, even you sort of think, oh, I can see where the shade's going to be, but I'm not sure how it's going to come together. But I just think often when I am drawing and I use that tortillon, I think, oh, actually, yeah, it's really working now. It's really making it come to life. So we need to be a little bit more careful with the surface of the tan tiles, just because it's a little slightly softer paper than the traditional white Zentangle tiles. I'm going to blend this one a little bit more, just very gently touching the paper there to just encourage it out a little. And now the same with the corners. So I'm not doing a huge amount with it because I don't want to bring it right to the centre, because I'm going to add some highlights to the centre. But what I do want to do is just keep the graphite off of this kind of edging, the aura line that we drew on the inside of the Molygon shapes, because having shadow, to have shadow or contrast, you need to have shadow, but you also need to have highlights as well. And the darker the shadow and the brighter the highlights, the higher the contrast. So if you're using a lot of shade, you want to add, make sure that there's like a nice white section right next to it, just to make it pop. So I'm popping my tortillon down there, and I'm going to pick up my white chalk pencil, the Zentangle chalk pencil. Again, I'm going to hold it in a similar way, and I'm going to just highlight these orbs here. Just a tiny touch in those top ones. And I also think what I might do is, because I've shaded the underside of my Molygon, I'm going to just add a little bit on this long side here. When I've started recording these little videos, I know which tangle I'm going to do, but I don't actually know, I haven't planned any further ahead than that. So I am kind of making this up a little bit on the fly, but that's kind of what I like about Zentangle. It's the surprise that you get at the end. I start with an empty tile, and I do not know, well, I might know vaguely how it's going to come out, but I'm not copying or haven't pre-rehearsed what I'm doing. I may have drawn the tangle before a few times, but not with this sort of bijou size and not with the intention of practicing this particular tile ahead. Right, so popping that down, I'm going to grab my white tortillon. It's just the same as my other tortillon, except I've written white on it so that I don't get confused and end up adding more graphite, because the graphite does tend to hang around on your tortillon. Just going to give it a little smudge to bring it into the tile, fix it in place. So doing these edges first on each of them, just a really gentle little brush with the tortillon. And then I'm gonna, did I do the one there? Yeah, I think I did. Just little invitation of the chalk into the uppermost orb in this Molygon shape. And there you go, there is my Molygon. So we filled it with orbs, and it's a really good tangle to kind of fill some space and kind of see where you go with it. Hope you enjoyed it.